After the fall of the Incas, Mayans, Aztecs, and other indigenous powers in Central and South America, Central and South America were dominated by European maritime powers, represented by Spain and Portugal. Then, after the Monroe Doctrine, Latin America was incorporated into the sphere of influence of the United States.
Central and South America were ruled by Spain for 300 years. There were only two fates for the natives during this period: death or slavery. Spanish domination and exploitation were very harsh. The atrocities committed by Spain in Central and South America are still referred to as Black Legends.
Black legend is the term indicating an unfavorable image of Spain and Spaniards, accusing them of cruelty and intolerance. Even among the European countries that colonized and ruled the world together, people shake their heads that the Spanish have been terrible.
Now, more than 500 years have passed since Columbus set foot on this continent. It has been more than 200 years since Central and South American countries became independent. There are now 19 countries where Spanish is spoken in this region. And of the 650 million people in Central and South America, about 70% are mestizo, or race of mixed Spanish ancestry. This group was a completely new race that did not exist before Columbus, Cortes, Pizarro, and other Spanish conquistadors came to this land. 1492 was one of the most important years in Spanish history, but also a fateful year for the people of Central and South America. It was in January of this year when Spain drove out Islam and completed the Reconquista, national restoration movement. There had been 800 years of Islamic rule. In March, Spain issued a decree on the expulsion of Jews to expel them as well. It was a time when religious madness in Spain reached its peak in reaction to long-standing Islamic rule. The end of August 1492, when the last Jews left Spain, Columbus headed for the Americas. It only became apparent much later, but all of this was one of the worst developments in history for the indigenous peoples of Central and South America. In fact, Spain was not in a position to support Columbus. For a long time, the country's system and finances were weak due to fighting Islam. At that time, as the Ottoman Turk Empire controlled the eastern trade routes and the Italian city-states controlled the Mediterranean trade, Spain, which had just recovered its own territory, had no room to do anything in Europe. In addition, Portugal's successful maritime expansion and its location right next to Spain made Spain very nervous. Spain, desperate to do something, took a gamble on Columbus's absurd proposal. Because of these circumstances, Spain's dominance in the Americas was limited from the beginning. First of all, the Spanish government had neither the money nor the administrative power to manage the vast territory. The expulsion of the Jews, driven by religious sentiment and with no regret for the future, made matters worse. With the disappearance of the Jews, there was no one to collect taxes, no one to pay taxes, and no one to lend the money. The descendants of the Jews who immigrated to the Netherlands played a part in bringing about the downfall of Spain by helping to make the Netherlands a maritime power.
When all this happened, the money flow of the Spanish royal family dried up right away, which meant that at the governmental level, Spain was no longer able to manage its colonies in Central and South America. So the colony was left entirely in the hands of the conquerors. Only 20% of the looted goods were sent to the Spanish crown, while the rest went to the conquistadors.
It was for this reason that the Spanish rulers of Central and South America were particularly cruel. On the other hand, there was also a massacre of indigenous people in North America, but there was no such large-scale mixing as in South America.
This difference is because there were many people who immigrated to the United States and Canada as a family unit from the beginning. However, Spanish presence in Central and South America was centered on male soldiers. Early immigrants were also predominantly white men. In the course of their settlement, a large-scale genetic mixing occurred.
Spain had already experienced large-scale mixing during the Islamic rule, so there was little resistance to this. The situation was a little different from England, France, and Germany, where races had never been forcibly mixed. People born mestizo were now the majority in Central and South America. If you look at the ancestry of mestizos, almost all of them are of Spanish blood from their fathers and Aboriginal blood from their mothers. Most of them have confusing identities in which to side with Spain as ancestor and Spain as conqueror. One has to deny either side. So in Latin American countries, people's perception of Spain is slightly different depending on how much Spanish blood has mixed in. It was only natural that Spain had a strict caste system throughout colonial rule, which divided classes according to the degree of mixed blood. Whites from mainland Spain were naturally at the top. And even if you were born to white people, you were treated as one level lower if you were born in Latin America. Called the Criollo, these people were able to amass vast wealth as rulers of Central and South America, but their political advancement was limited. Because of this disparity, there were also some people from the ruling class who left for childbirth expeditions to Spain. Anyway, the Criollos who were dissatisfied with the situation later led the independence movements of Latin America. Beneath this ruling class were the mestizos, a mixture of white Spanish and native ancestry. The treatment of mestizos was still much better than that of natives. This Spanish caste system, in fact, still exists in Central and South America.
The concentration of wealth among whites and white-dominated cartels are a major cause of poverty in Latin America. There is also a tendency for mestizos to be overcounted because indigenous people register as mestizos to get better treatment.
Due to this historical background, there is a very friendly attitude towards Spain in Uruguay, Argentina, Costa Rica, Puerto Rico, Chile, and Brazil, where white people make up the majority. There are also relatively many of these wealthy and conservative groups who refer to Spain as their home country.
In El Salvador, Honduras, Ecuador, Nicaragua, Paraguay, Colombia, and Venezuela, where mestizos are the majority, the favorable position towards Spain is definitely less pronounced than in countries with many white citizens. In Bolivia, Peru, and Guatemala, for example, where the indigenous people account for a significant portion, there are still quite a few people who are hostile to Spain.
Anti-Spanish sentiment is relatively stronger in countries that had already achieved an advanced civilization before the arrival of Spain. Mexico with the Aztecs, Guatemala with the ancient Mayan civilization, and Peru with the Inca Empire have strong anti-Spanish sentiments. Because of the shared language, religion, and cultural homogeneity that comes from race mixing, there is no clear distinction between perpetrators and victims in Central and South America. In Central and South America, indigenous languages such as Quechua, Guarani, and Aymara are still treated as official languages. However, few people actually use them, and the Spanish language is overwhelming. The Spanish conquistadors deliberately demolished the natives' temples and built Catholic churches on their foundations. This attack was intended to break the will of the natives and prevent rebellion by symbolically showing that our God has defeated your God. So to the natives, Spanish Catholicism seemed to be a religion with a Bible in one hand and a sword in the other. But now most Latin Americans are Catholics and Protestants and practice much more fervently than Europeans. Mixed races can walk in bizarre ways. A small percentage of mestizos take great pride in being of white blood. They actively sympathize with European imperialism. Among mestizos, there are people who somewhat despise indigenous people. Many bitter experiences are forgotten through the force of time. It has already been 17 generations since Spain invaded Central and South America. 200 years have passed since independence. Central and South Americans with an optimistic temperament easily dismiss their history as already in the past. In addition, there are many people who do not receive proper history education.
Finally, because of Spain's low political influence as such, there is little Spanish presence in the region, so a clash is realistically unlikely. Anti-Spanish sentiment is much lower than anti-American, anti-French, and anti-British sentiment in the former colonies.
To sum up, in the past, Spain committed genocide, destruction of civilizations, and resource plunder. But now, Central and South Americans do not have much hostility towards Spain. Spain is still arrogant, but at least it is the closest country emotionally and culturally in Europe, can be said to be the general perception in Latin America.
Even if Latin Americans do not have strong negative feelings towards Spain. Some third parties believe Spain should feel guilty about its past exploitation of Latin America, such as the resource exploitation, labor exploitation, including slavery, and mass killings that Spain committed in the region. Thank you for watching the video, Latin American Sentiment Towards Spain, provided by History and Current Events. Gina, Cindy, Bella, and Tony have contributed so far as narrators. Thank you.